How will Mason Greenwood fit into Ten Hag's Manchester United side? So there still isn't a major update on Mason Greenwood's situation with the continuation of United's investigation, seeing him not selected for the pre-season tour. But at the moment at least, the two likely options seem to be either that he gets sent out on loan for next season, or that he stays and fights for a position in Ten Hag's squad. And so I thought I'd analyse both scenarios as well as an unlikely third, before coming to a conclusion on what I think United should do. But before I go any further, remember to subscribe to the channel and check out my Patreon podcast, which will be linked below. But also, if you want cheap, good quality football jerseys for the new season, or retro jerseys from the past 40 years, then check out jerseyfifa.com, a link will be in my Instagram bio, and if you use coupon code Atlantis, you should get a discount as well. I'll leave my Instagram at the top of the description and comment section, and a link will be in my Instagram bio. We'll start off with what I think is the most likely option, which is that he goes out on loan. Now, because of the situation, it looks like the only clubs that are going to be interested are from Spain, Italy and Turkey. But to be honest, I don't think Turkey is the right place ideally for Greenwood. I think he needs to go to a top 3 league, and I would say preferably a club playing European football. And so I think the potential suitors are AC and Inter Milan, Roma, Juventus, Lazio, Napoli, Atletico Madrid, Real Sociedad, Villarreal and Real Betis. Personally, I'd avoid Roma and Atletico due to me thinking that Simeone and Mourinho's style of management could be very hit or miss with Greenwood's development. Ideally, I think Napoli and Lazio's likely use of him as a right-sided attacker in a front three is the most natural fit. Though I also think putting him into Imanol Alguacil's Real Sociedad 4-4-2 diamond system as essentially a kind of a wide forward that Alexander Isak was from the left but on the right could be an interesting tactical move as well. And this is because whilst I do think Greenwood's long-term position lies as an out-and-out centre forward, I think at this point in his career he's best playing the role that Marcus Rashford plays as a wide forward from the right rather than as a winger like Antony. And so playing in a front two where he's allowed to take up more central positions rather than holding a wide position could aid his long-term tactical development and also see him perform better, enabling him to get into more shooting positions around the box, and therefore if his finishing ability has sustained during his absence, he should be able to pick up more goals than he would as a natural winger. And so purely from a tactical point of view, I think Real Sociedad followed by Napoli and then closely by Maurizio Sarri's Lazio would be my top 3, but I would prefer Greenwood to go to Italy with either Lazio or Napoli, as I just think that Italy is a more pressurised football environment, and in Spain, because there is so much attention drawn to Real Madrid and Barcelona, it takes the pressure off the other top 6 clubs, whereas in Italy a combination of the football ultras alongside the absence of a dominating force continuously decade after decade means that with either Napoli or Lazio, Greenwood is going to have to adapt quickly to his new environment, which would be a great litmus test to see how he adapts to the inevitable uproar when he does eventually return to United in 2024. Whilst obviously enabling United to see if his form from 2021 and 2020 returns before deciding on his future. For me, Napoli would be the number 1 choice, as whilst Lazio did have an excellent season last campaign, finishing second, Napoli were and I think continue to be a level above Lazio, both in Serie A but also in the Champions League. And I think, unlike a lot of young players who go on loan, Greenwood is more than capable of going into a title winning side and being a starting player. And he would start on the right as an upgrade on Hirving Lozano, who looks set to move away from Napoli this summer, and if he was to be sold to the Premier League, which is rumoured with West Ham interested, they could probably bring in around £20 million, which I do think suits all parties, as a move to the Premier League would of course be more in the interest of Hirving Lozano than a move to the MLS or Saudi Arabia, as he's still only 28 years old. But £20 million isn't a massive fee to reinvest in an elite level right-sided attacker, which is who they need to be looking to replace Lozano with. And of course, with Osimhen and Kvaratskhelia both likely remaining at the club, and only Kim Min-jae's £60 million move to Bayern Munich the only major sale, Napoli are going to have to spread their money a lot thinner than they may have thought, and so bringing in Greenwood on loan would give them an elite level option in the right wing position, and still a significant amount in the budget. Plus, for some reason I just think the pressure at Napoli would actually suit Greenwood, giving him a slight taste of what he'll face when he returns to England. But what if United's proposed Qatari takeover doesn't happen before the end of the window, and Ten Hag decides to keep Mason Greenwood because of budget constraints? Where does he fit into the side, and what does Greenwood in a Ten Hag system look like in the long term? Well, I think the ideal scenario if he were to return would be that Harry Kane is also signed, as I think the front three of Rashford and Greenwood, either side of Kane, works a lot better tactically, as with Kane basically playing as a false 9, There is going to be a lot of space centrally for both Rashford and Greenwood to make runs into, and with both of them being able to cut inside and finish with their stronger foot, I think they can essentially play as wide forwards, just as Mo Salah and Sadio Mane were, alongside Roberto Firmino in Klopp's prime Liverpool side. But I would argue that on individual ability at least, Greenwood, Kane and Rashford is better than Salah, Firmino and Mane. And that is because I think all three of United's front three are capable of picking up between 20 to 25 Premier League goals and over 30 goals in all competitions. Plus with Kane, Mount and Fernandez's creativity behind, I could easily see that front three beating United's 2007-2008 output of 79 goals and 29 assists for the season, from Tevez, Rooney and Ronaldo. Like that particular front three, I think Greenwood, Kane and Rashford would have the perfect blend between ball progression, creative and goal scoring ability, with Rashford and Greenwood's movement in behind into central positions being optimally suited to the movement dropping off from the forward line that we would see from Harry Kane. Out of possession, I think Greenwood is going to have to be prepared to do the defensive work of a right winger, tracking back into a flat midfield four at times, whilst also being an aggressive presser high up the pitch. But I do think that Greenwood would be able to fulfil these duties. But what happens if only Højlund comes in and not Harry Kane? Well, alongside Højlund and Rashford, Greenwood would have to adapt, because Højlund is not going to drop off as deep as Kane, and so Greenwood will have to retain a wider position, even in the final third at times. But most of the time when the ball moves into the final third, you want Mason Greenwood looking to get into the box, at least on the right side, rather than holding a wide position outside of the box. And so in order to facilitate that, Ten Hag may need one of Mason Mount or Diogo Dalot behind to provide those overlapping runs, keeping the width in the system and allowing Greenwood to move in field. If he isn't going to be a part of Ten Hag's team next season, I would seriously consider selling him. I don't really see the point in loaning him out, as when he returns from his loan next season, you're going to be in the same position and you're still going to have to make a decision. So I think just make the decision this summer, either he stays with the squad or you look to sell him, and you could probably bring in around 50 to 60 million pounds. Now I know people will be saying that Greenwood's worth 100 million, and under usual circumstances he's probably worth even more than that. And so despite the controversy probably halving Greenwood's market value, I do still think around 50 to 60 million pounds would allow United to reinvest in a player who's not just a replacement for Greenwood positionally, but also in terms of his quality. And so if United did somehow manage to pull off all of these transfer deals, which we know they won't, they could bring in as much as 350 million. Now even if we are a bit more conservative and we say 250 million pounds, which I definitely think would be possible if United had competent people in their transfer department, then that's still a sizable amount of money to be reinvested in the squad. And of course you would need the help of the Saudis in order to recoup a lot of the money you spent on Fred and Maguire, but it's definitely not out of the question. And later on in the episode I will be talking about what I think the overall effect of Saudi Arabia entering the football market will have on the overall transfer window. But let's look at who United should be looking to replace Greenwood with, because that is probably the most controversial of all my transfer outgoings in this episode. And just before I get into his hypothetical replacement, I'm not saying that Greenwood should be sold, I'm just exploring the idea of him potentially being sold, because I do think there is a good player on the market to potentially be his replacement, and that player is Moussa Diaby. Or should I say it would have been Moussa Diaby, because it now looks like he's close to a move to Aston Villa, with them reportedly agreeing a fee of around £50 million, close to €60 million with Bayer Leverkusen for Moussa Diaby, who is only 24 years old. But in my opinion, Diaby is well worth a move to one of the top 6 clubs and should definitely be playing in the Champions League, and so this is a massive coup for Aston Villa. And I'm surprised Newcastle didn't go in for him as the Alan Saint-Maximin replacement instead of Harvey Barnes, as I think Diaby for £50 million is a much better deal than Harvey Barnes for £38 million. And Diaby to me is the type of player who I could see exploding in the next few years, particularly in the Premier League, really breaking out as Sadio Mane did at Southampton. Last season for Bayer Leverkusen he picked up 14 goals and 11 assists in 48 games in all competitions. And the season before this was 17 goals and 14 assists in 42 games in all competitions. And so you could see that Moussa Diaby is a high output kind of attacker who is going to contribute significantly via his goals and assists alongside his ball carrying and his dribbling. Now I will say it is questionable whether Moussa Diaby has the out of possession attributes such as his pressing and his defensive work to the level needed to function efficiently in Ten Hag's high pressing system, and so Unai Emery's more conservative approach may be a better option for him. But arguably an even better replacement for Mason Greenwood would be Kingsley Coman. Just by glancing at Kingsley Coman's FBref report, we can see how good his output is, as over the past 365 days, when compared against every other attacking midfielder and winger in Europe, Coman ranks in the 90th percentile or higher for his non-penalty goals, his XG assisted, as well as his successful take-ons and his progressive carries, whilst also ranking around the 75th percentile for his progressive passes, and massively overperforming his non-penalty XG by 0.16 per 90, showing that not only is Kingsley Coman a winger with elite level dribbling and ball carrying ability, but he also has a creative and goal scoring ability to be a significant threat in the final third as well. And Kingsley Coman's raw numbers are also very impressive as well, as he recorded 9 goals and 7 assists in 35 games in all competitions for Bayern Munich last season, and 8 goals and 6 assists in 32 the season before. He's still only 27 years old and he's got a great deal of versatility. He can play either from the left or the right flank, but for United and Ten Hag, he'd likely start on the right hand side ahead of Antony initially. And he offers a greater deal of variety and unpredictability from that right flank than Antony, as Antony's always looking to come inside on his left foot, whereas Kingsley Coman's got the ability to come inside onto his left foot to look to release a shot or an in-swing cross, or even link the play around the box, but he's also got the ability to go down the outside, dropping a shoulder and using his pace to burst past the opposition fullback and get into a crossing position where his crossing is actually very good, and he creates a high number of chances by going down the outside of fullbacks. And so certainly with either Dalot or Aaron Wan-Bissaka behind, who aren't the types to be overlapping and providing those runs ahead of the right winger, having a winger like Kingsley Coman who can retain a wide position and provide the movement down the outside of the fullback can then allow Dalot or Wan-Bissaka to retain a deeper and narrower position. Coman does have a contract until 2027, and so he's not going to be available on the cheap, likely costing United between 60 and 70 million pounds. Overall, Coman is an elite level winger and one of the best in the world from either the right or the left flank. The only concern I would have would be his injury record, as he's only managed to play just over 20 Bundesliga games in each of the last 2 seasons, and he has suffered a lot of muscle problems as well. And so maybe the better option from Bayern Munich would be Serge Gnabry, who played 47 games in all competitions last season, picking up 17 goals and 12 assists. And the season before this was 17 goals and 9 assists in 45 games. And so in the last 2 seasons, Gnabry's picked up 34 goals. And like Coman, he's very versatile, capable of playing either from the left or the right. And surprisingly, a lot of his output does actually come from the right. When Gnabry was at his peak, which I think was when Bayern Munich won the Champions League 2019-2020, when he had those outstanding displays against Chelsea and Tottenham, Gnabry was most dangerous from the left side, cutting inside onto his right foot and providing the runs ahead of Robert Lewandowski. However, under Julian Nagelsmann, we have seen Gnabry play more from the right, playing more like a natural winger, being able to go down the outside like Kingsley Coman, but also able to come inside onto his left foot and link play in congested areas. Whilst I do think Kingsley Coman is the better carrier of the ball, being a much better dribbler and having a bit more pace than Gnabry, Gnabry still has the ability to inject pace into an attack by driving the ball forward at pace, but he doesn't complete anywhere near as many dribbles or carries or even progressive passes as Kingsley Coman. But Gnabry does stand out when it comes to his actual output in the final third, being much better at getting into goal scoring positions than Kingsley Coman, which can be seen by the fact that Gnabry ranks in the high 90th percentiles for not just his non-penalty goals, but also his non-penalty XG as well, showing that Gnabry has a knack of being able to find himself in goal scoring positions with a high probability of scoring, and then taking those chances when they come. And so this is why I would refer to Kingsley Coman as more of a natural winger, someone who's going to hold their width, and being more of a ball progressing and creative threat, whilst Gnabry's going to provide a lot more goal scoring ability, being much more of a goal scoring forward rather than a creative winger. Not taking injuries into account, I think Kingsley Coman would probably be the better option from a stylistic point of view, as especially with Rasmus Højlund coming in, having a right winger who can go down the outside and put in an early cross could definitely suit the Danish international. However, given that both players are around the same age, with Gnabry only being 2 years older, and both costing around £60 million, and with Gnabry having a significantly better injury record and likely to play at least 15 to 20 more games than Kingsley Coman next season, from a logical point of view it seems like Gnabry is the better option, and by selling Greenwood for around £60 million, the Gnabry fee would be covered, and unlike with the acquisition of Antony last summer, United would be bringing in a right winger who is a proven elite level goal scorer from those wide positions, not just over last season but over the last 4 or 5 seasons, and not just in the Bundesliga but also in the Champions League as well. Now, with Ten Hag wanting to replace Greenwood with more of a natural winger, particularly an inverted winger who's going to come inside onto his left foot, essentially an upgrade on Antony, with Antony being the second choice and maybe Ahmad going on loan, then going down that avenue, United could target maybe Rafinha or Michael Olise. Now, Rafinha is a level or two above Olise, definitely, and you can see this by looking at both players' FB ref report, as Rafinha ranks much highly when it comes to his non-penalty XG and non-penalty goals, whilst Olise is ranking very low for both of those, showing that Rafinha is a much better goal scoring threat, particularly from open play when he's coming inside onto his left foot. But not just from the right, but also on counter-attacks, as Rafinha does have a lot of goal scoring opportunities and goal creating opportunities from central positions and even from the left as well, whereas I do feel Olise is a bit isolated more on the right side. But like Rafinha, Olise is a creative threat from the right flank, and to a significant degree, as whilst Rafinha does rank in the mid 90th percentiles for his XG assisted, Olise isn't far behind, ranking in the mid 80s. And I think either one of Rafinha or Michael Olise would be an excellent option to replace Riyad Mahrez at Manchester City, as they are kind of the same player, and resembling Angel Di Maria as well. Both Olise and Rafinha can come inside onto their left foot from the right side and curl in a dangerous in-swinging cross, with both Olise and Rafinha being elite when it comes to doing this, whereas I do think both Ahmad and Antony do need to improve this part of their game. If I was United, personally I'd avoid Olise because I think he may stagnate Antony's development, as like Amad Diallo as well, both are very young and raw, but I do think Olise is the best out of the three and probably has the most potential, though it is going to take the Crystal Palace man at least 2 or 3 years to reach the level of Rafinha, and so that's why off the two, the Barcelona man would be my number one target. And despite Rafinha likely costing the most, probably around 65 to 70 million pounds, he would be my number one to replace Greenwood out of all the options I've suggested, with Serge Gnabry second, Kingsley Coman third because of his injuries, and Michael Olise at fourth.